A frozen body pulled from melting ice, an arrow lodged beneath the shoulder blade, a wound across the hand that never had time to heal. For 30 years, scientists were certain they knew this man. A Copper Age herder, caught in a sudden storm, frozen within hours. Every part of that story was wrong. Evidence buried deep inside his own bones has rewritten his face, his ancestry, and the final hours of his life. In September of 1991, two hikers crossing a high ridge in the Alps noticed something dark protruding from the ice. At first, they assumed it was a climbing accident, perhaps a hiker who had slipped decades earlier and never been found. They reported it to the authorities, and a recovery team was sent to bring the body down. The extraction was not gentle. Ice this old does not release easily, and the team eventually turned to a jackhammer to break the corpse free. In the process, the hip was fractured, clothing tore, bone cracked. That damage would follow the case for the next 3 decades, complicating every study that came after. Then the radiocarbon results came back, and the accident theory collapsed instantly. This was not a missing climber. This body was over 5,000 years old, the oldest natural human mummy ever discovered in Europe. Within weeks, the find had become a sensation, and something less scientific followed close behind: a dispute over ownership. A new survey placed the discovery site just inside Italian territory, by a matter of meters, and the body was eventually transferred to a climate-controlled chamber in northern Italy, held at 6 degrees below freezing. Millions of visitors have since filed past the viewing window to see him. For 30 years, what they saw was treated as fact. The body itself was extraordinarily intact. Glacier ice had preserved not just skin and bone, but stomach contents, blood cells, even tattoos. 61 of them, in fact, clustered around the joints, the lower back, the knees. Not decoration. The placement matches points still used today in treatments for chronic pain, suggesting a man who had spent years managing arthritis. His last meal was still in his stomach. Wild meat, grain, and a trace of a toxic plant that may have served as medicine or simple food wrapping. He had eaten roughly 2 hours before he died. His equipment told its own story: a copper axe, rare and valuable for his era, a flint knife, a bow left unfinished, a quiver holding only 2 arrows ready to fire. Whoever this man was, he did not fit the picture of an ordinary herder caught off guard by weather. And the deeper researchers examined the evidence, the less that picture held together at all. By 2012, geneticists had recovered enough material to sequence a genome, and the results shaped everything that followed. Light skin, brown hair, ancestry linked to the vast population movements that had reshaped prehistoric Europe. It fit the expected story of the era neatly enough that no one pushed back. Museums built a reconstruction from this data: a lean, weathered face, a full beard, fur clothing against alpine cold. That image became one of the most recognizable faces in archaeology, reproduced in textbooks, repeated in documentaries, printed on postcards, sold in the gift shop a few meters from the mummy itself. For over a decade, it stood as settled fact, because no one had the tools to test it further. That changed in 2020. The original genome had a flaw, and the scientists who produced it knew it at the time. When the body was pulled from the ice in 1991, it passed through dozens of ungloved hands before anyone understood its age. Photographers, local officials, curious onlookers standing at the recovery site. Modern DNA had settled into the outer layers of bone, and the technology of 2012 could not fully separate that contamination from the ancient signal underneath. For years, that limitation sat quietly in the footnotes of academic papers, acknowledged but unresolved. Museums did not wait for a cleaner answer. A reconstruction had already gone up. Textbooks had already gone to print. A new team decided to try again in 2020, this time targeting the pelvis. It is the densest bone in the human body and the hardest for outside DNA to work its way into. Drilling deep into the interior, past every layer, a stray hand or a stray breath could have reached in 1991, gave them something closer to a clean signal. The resulting sequence reached over 15 times the coverage of the original study, 15 times the detail, 15 times the confidence in every base pair read. The findings were published in Cell Genomics in August of 2023, co-authored by a researcher who had spent over 2 decades studying this one body at the Institute in Bolzano. 2 decades of looking at the same mummy, and the deepest read of his genome, yet still managed to contradict almost everything that had come before it. For 30 years, scientists believed this man had light skin. DNA says otherwise. The new genome showed the darkest pigmentation of any known European individual from his period, more consistent with populations from considerably warmer latitudes than the Alps. The dark leather color visitors assumed was 5,000 years of mummification was, in fact, close to how he actually looked in life. Every museum case, every printed reconstruction, every documentary still frame had been quietly wrong for 3 decades, and no one visiting had any way of knowing it. The reconstruction had given him a full head of brown hair and a thick beard. The new data told a different story. He carried strong genetic markers for baldness, and by his mid-40s, he had very likely lost most of his hair. The beard, the flowing locks familiar from every textbook photo, invented. None of it was supported by the evidence, which raises an uncomfortable question. If the face shown to millions of people for 3 decades was wrong, what else had been assumed rather than proven? The most significant correction was not about his appearance at all. It was about where he came from. The 2012 study had placed him within a population carrying ancestry from the vast steppe migrations that swept across Europe in his lifetime, part of a genetic blending already underway across the continent. Around that same period, waves of steppe-related populations were moving westward, gradually mixing into the farming communities that had settled Europe thousands of years earlier. By the time the Iceman was alive, that mixing was well underway almost everywhere researchers had sequenced ancient remains. The new high-coverage genome found none of that signature. No steppe ancestry at all. Instead, his genetic makeup traced almost entirely back to early farming populations that had migrated into Europe from Anatolia thousands of years before his birth, a lineage that was already fading from the continent by the time he was alive. He carried more of that ancestry than any other European individual ever sequenced from his era, not a small margin, the highest ever recorded. Which means somewhere in the isolation of the Alps, a population kept breeding largely among itself, untouched by the demographic tide, reshaping the rest of the continent. Mountain valleys can do that. They can seal a lineage off from history for generations, while the lowlands change entirely. He was not part of the blending. He was what was being left behind by it. The last identifiable trace of a population the rest of Europe was quietly forgetting, walking through mountains that would outlast every trace of his people but him. For decades, the accepted account of his death was simple. An arrow severed a major artery beneath his shoulder, and he bled out within minutes. A 2025 forensic reanalysis, using 3-dimensional modeling that did not exist when the body was first scanned, found something the earlier studies had missed: a clotted mass of blood at the wound site, roughly the size of a golf ball. A wound like that does not form in someone who dies in minutes. It forms in someone whose heart is still beating, still trying to close the damage. He survived the arrow. Long enough, in fact, to remove the wooden shaft from his own back, which explains why only the stone arrowhead was ever recovered inside the body. He may have walked afterward. He may have crawled. Either way, the arrow did not kill him instantly. It started something slower and considerably more painful. than anyone had previously believed. Even the season of his death had been misread. Plant material recovered near the body pointed to autumn, and that detail supported the original theory neatly. A man caught by an early alpine storm, frozen within hours, preserved almost immediately. Later, botanical analysis told a different story. Pollen found in his digestive tract came from a tree that blooms only in late spring at that altitude. He died in spring, not autumn, and his body did not freeze right away. It lay exposed on that mountain pass through the warmer months. Insect activity in the surrounding soil confirms decomposition had already begun before the first seasonal ice returned in late autumn and slowly sealed him away for the next 53 centuries. The clean, sudden death described for 30 years, a man overtaken by weather and frozen almost on the spot, never happened. What happened was slower, more exposed, more alone. Which brings the case back to the only question forensic evidence can never fully close. Who did this? The angle of the arrow places the shooter downhill, firing upward, at a target who was either resting or already walking away. The stone used for the arrowhead is traceable to valleys to the south, suggesting the pursuit began there and followed him upward, pass by pass, into terrain that grows thinner and colder with every step. His own weapons carry blood from at least 4 other people. Something violent had already happened before he ever reached that pass, a fight he had walked away from, but not without cost. The defensive wound across his hand fits a man who had grabbed at a blade during close combat, hours, or perhaps a day before he died. Wounds like that do not come from a single clean strike. They come from someone fighting for their life at close range more than once. The likeliest sequence: a confrontation somewhere in the valleys below, a wounded man fleeing north into the high mountains carrying a valuable copper axe and a nearly empty quiver, and someone following him, patiently, across passes where the air runs thin and the wind never fully stops. A pursuit like that takes commitment. Whoever followed him into that altitude wanted him dead badly enough to accept the same cold, the same thin air, the same risk of never coming back down. Whoever fired that final arrow left the axe behind. In an era when a tool like that could define a person's status, walking away from it suggests either panic or a fear of being identified by carrying it home. A weapon that valuable does not go unnoticed in a small community. Bringing it back might have been the same as signing a confession. No one ever came looking for him. No search party climbed that ridge. No community reported a missing man matching his description, or if they did, no record of it survived the 5,000 years between his death and ours. He simply stopped coming home, and somewhere, at some fire, his name eventually stopped being spoken. The evidence has answered almost everything the original theory got wrong: his skin, his hair, his ancestry, the length and cruelty of his final hours. It has never answered the one question that mattered most to the man who fired that arrow, and to no one else since. We know exactly how he died. We will likely never know why, or by whose hand. What we do know is this: for 30 years, the world looked at a reconstruction built on incomplete data and called it settled fact. His bones had the real answer the entire time. It simply took technology 53 centuries and one careful drill into a pelvis to finally listen. Discovery continues. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more ancient mysteries and impossible discoveries.